All right, so just hit live, just waiting for things to go live, friends. Welcome back to another session. We're going to be live here any second now, and we are live. Happy Monday to you. So over the weekend, it was actually late last week, the CDC updated their morbidity and mortality weekly report. And I noticed, because I like to check that every single week, to look at the leading causes of death, the leading contributing factors, so that I can create content on this channel to share with you preventative health tips based upon science, based upon research, based upon outcomes. And I was actually very surprised that in the year of 2020, the top two leading causes of death were not probably what you might think they were from. They were not from viral infection. So before we actually get into that, I just want to set the stage and set the premise. We are not undermining anyone who has lost their life due to coronavirus or heart disease or cancer or suicide or anything like that. But if you were to ask maybe 100 people off the street. Maybe if you went to downtown Manhattan, you went to Washington, D.C., you went to Miami, you went to L.A., and you were to ask them, what was the leading cause of mortality in all of the individuals living in the U.S. during the last year? I would imagine that 85 to 90% of people would say, of course, the coronavirus, the coronavirus, the coronavirus. But in fact, what we're going to share with you will actually surprise you. The coronavirus was not the top first leading cause of death, nor was it the second leading cause of death. However, we have completely upended most people's lives, your kids' lives, travel plans, family plans, sports, work. I mean, a lot of people unfortunately lost their jobs. Yet, during this whole time, fast food restaurants and restaurants contributing to the development of the top two leading causes of mortality continued and had their businesses remain open. So that's why we're talking about this information, so that we can, going forward, make better policy decisions and choices. So here is the number of deaths in the U.S., okay, based upon age group. Now, this actually will come as news to a lot of people. A lot of people think that, oh, all these kids are dropping like flies, which is why schools are closed. No, I think there's been a total of 240 deaths under the age of 17 from coronavirus. So the policy to close schools is completely not based on science. It's based on politics and funding. So that doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, if you look at the leading age group here, it's individuals over the age of 65. Okay. Now, if you think about working class individuals, people that are going to work 9 to 5, most people start to retire around 65. So why did we close the entire economy when more than 81% of all of the deaths from this virus were in individuals who are over the age of retirement age anyway? Again, think about that, the 80-20 rule. 80% of the deaths and mortalities occurred in people over the age of 65, which are usually retired. So here is some of the different coexisting, comorbid, or pre-existing conditions linked with some of the mortalities that have been listed as the cause of death as COVID-19. So you see here, lung and heart issues keep coming up. So you see respiratory failure, respiratory disease, respiratory arrest. You see hypertensive disease, which is high blood pressure. So 20% of people that died of this virus in the past year have had elevated blood pressure. You see ischemic heart disease, you see cardiac arrest, you see cardiac arrhythmias, okay? Now, this is important because, as we are going to talk about right now, here's the infographic from the CDC's own website. In 2020, COVID-19 was the third leading cause of death in the U.S. Now, it's important to spend a little bit of time on this because I think it actually is revealing and gives us better ideas about how we can make people healthier. So if we think about heart disease and cancer put together, the combined mortalities from that, there was 3.7 times more deaths from those two causes than COVID-19. I'm going to say that again because I think it's really important. There is 3.7 times more fatalities from heart disease and cancer combined compared to just the virus. That's number one. Point number two is the number one pre-existing risk factor that leads to increased COVID-19 disease severity is, guess what? Heart disease and heart-related issues. And so, if you look here, that's the numbers. Okay, so heart disease killed, I think 690,000 individuals. Cancer killed 598,000 individuals. And then you see here, COVID-19 was about, it's 300 some odd. So 3.7 times more people died from these two conditions. Yet, let me just, let's just talk real here. You can go to McDonald's right now and get carcinogenic food. You can go to Target and clean your house with chemicals that have carcinogens in them. You can turn on your drinking water and get lead and arsenic, cadmium, mercury, aluminum, and all these things that are going to not only contribute to heart disease, but also potentially cancer. You can go out and buy cigarettes and alcohol and all these things. So it's so interesting that when the media decides to sort of myopically focus on one thing, that everyone seemingly thinks that that's the only thing that matters, when we now know that there's many other things that matter. So while you're masking or distancing or washing your hands or sanitizing your groceries, you might also want to consider exercise. You might want to consider sleep and circadian rhythm alignment, as we're going to talk about in just a moment, because statistically, the probability of you dying from heart disease or cancer is actually much higher if you look at total numbers compared to the virus. Now, of course, there's an age bias here. For those of you just now coming on here, more than 80% of the deaths were individuals of retirement age, 65 or over. So does it make a lot of sense that we closed the entire economy, provided that most working people actually, when they were exposed, did not die? So we're going to get into some different things here. But first, friends, I do want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by our very own Myoscience Nutrition tools to help you optimize your health and start feeling better. We just launched this new organic, non-GMO, and glyphosate-free hemp extract that works amazing for sleep. So the unique thing about using hemp and hemp-derived compounds to support relaxation in your body's endocannabinoid system tone, which is really neat because your endocannabinoid receptors are found all throughout your body. What's unique about that is these broad spectrum hemp formulations, they actually don't perturb your sleep cycles. They support and foster deep restorative sleep. So if you're curious about this and you want to enhance your sleep but not interrupt the REM stages and deep sleep stages, you can hop on over to our website, myoscience.com. That's myoscience with an X, MYOXCIENCE.com. Definitely check it out. Links will be below, and use the coupon code podcast to save. But here's what's interesting about this, and this is why I think you are seeing some people that are being critical of everything that's going on, is because if you actually look at some of the mitigation strategies that we could be doing from a public health policy level, we could be implementing things like sauna therapy. So this is a Kaplan-Meier curve that is giving you insights on the reduced risk of things like influenza and pneumonia. And there's actually some really good data showing that sauna therapy and heat can actually prevent heart disease and hypertension. Just one sauna session can actually lower your blood pressure significantly. So just literally one session. So there's been quite a few long-term studies, follow-up studies, prospective studies that have been following people that have been regularly sauna bathing for the past 26 years and seeing a reduction in cerebrovascular disease and cardiovascular disease, and even mild cognitive impairment, Alzheimer's, dementia. We're talking about a 50 to 63% reduction in those aforementioned diseases. Yet we have the world closing saunas, right? So you can now see why this is becoming sort of frustrating for people that are not only looking at infectious disease research, but are looking at whole body research and realizing that more to health than hand sanitizer and social distancing. So really important stuff to just keep in mind, that sauna therapy should be a tool. And in different countries throughout the world, saunas are open to the public. Saunas are part of the zeitgeist, a part of the culture. And there's a lot of things that we can do and we should be doing to improve whole body health. So this is what's interesting about this virus and so forth, and looking at like the major cities where there's been a lot of outbreaks. This is where people are pretty tech savvy. There's a lot of tech companies in the Northeast and in Los Angeles and things like that. A lot of streetlights, a lot of urbanization. So there's some interesting correlations between our immune system physiology and functioning and the circadian clock system. So I'm just going to lean in and read this paper to you. A tangled threesome, circadian rhythm, body temperature, and variation in the immune system. So what's interesting is we now know that various microbes have a seasonal effect, and it could have to do, the seasonality the change in seasons and the influence in the sort of prevalence and infectivity of the disease may in fact be part because our host physiology is changing. Now, here's body temperature changing in the spring and summer and the fall. And there was actually some really interesting studies. We're going to get into a few of these in just a moment, showing that based upon your circadian rhythm chronotype, that may affect the predisposition of when individuals get exposed. And I mean, when or if they get exposed, whether or not they will then have problems from that exposure event based upon the chronotype. And this also might have to do with vaccine efficacy. So some of the studies are actually showing that, if you want to take the vaccine, based upon your morbidities, your age, your risk factors, who you're exposed to, if you're a healthcare worker, if you have a multi-generational household, et cetera, that the efficacy of the vaccine might be enhanced if you take it in the morning based upon your body's immune system tone compared to later in the day. Isn't that fascinating that your circadian clock system is influencing your immune system response in real time? And it turns out that, when we're sleeping in the first part of the morning is when your immune system is most active. And so I thought that's super fascinating. So here's just another study that I think is worth diving into. So it's called, the title of this paper, for those of you just kind of listening here, is Clocks, Viruses, and Immunity: Lessons from the COVID-19 Pandemic. So again, it's important to understand that social distancing, that hand sanitizer and all of these things, they're not the only mitigation strategies to improve your body's immune system response. There are other things that we could and should be doing. Going to bed at regular, consistent times every single day, rising and waking and going outside and exposing our body to the sun, both in the morning time and also in the evening, because the shades or the temperature of the sun changes, and those changes in our body's input by receiving those inputs actually favorably enhance our circadian clock system and our sleep response. So getting evening light is just as good as getting morning light. That evening, kind of that amber hue that we see when we see the sunset. And I make an effort to do this every night now, is just go outside in the evening to your right, as the sun is lowering in the sky, just to get outside, just to move, I play with the chickens, put away the chicken feed, stuff like that, walk my kid, go for a walk. It really enhances sleep and getting off these devices before bed. So these are things that, friends, they can influence your body's circadian rhythm, which influences your immune system, which affects your predisposition to having a severe infection or a real mild infection. So this stuff is actually really important. Now, what I'm going to do is just see if there's any questions here as we kind of are rocking and rolling. And there's a new study about DHEA that I got to share this with you. I'm going to do a whole video and unpack it, but let's talk about it right here. So this study was done by researchers in Poland, and they tracked, I think it was 30 individuals enrolled in the study. It was a 6-month-long study. Now, Hashimoto's and autoimmune thyroid conditions are much more prevalent in women, but they used men in this particular study. There has been many other studies on DHEA, and I'll define what DHEA is in a moment. But they split, there was 2 arms of the study, a control arm that didn't take any DHEA and a intervention arm for 6 months. Again, they tracked baseline levels, they tracked testosterone, they tracked various autoimmune thyroid biomarkers, they looked at testosterone, hormones, all of that. And what these scientists were actually able to find, and you can view these as I'm sort of explaining the differences here, but let me just pause and sort of define, and you can see what DHEA stands for. So dihydroepiandrosterone, so DHEA, this is a hormone made by your body's adrenal glands, okay? It starts to decline after age 25. All hormones tend to decline with age, and accelerated biologic aging, a lot of psychological stress, physiologic stress, poor sleep, poor diet exacerbates the age-related loss or decline in hormone function. Now, here's where DHEA is really unique, is that it feeds into and provides the precursors for a myriad of other sex hormones, especially for aging men and especially for aging women, because after menopause, DHEA is the sole source of sex hormones for women. and it's coming from your female adrenal gland. So many women, especially after menopause, are very low in DHEA, and they don't even know it because it's not even on the radar for most doctors, unfortunately. So DHEA levels naturally decline with age, especially after menopause. It's a challenge for women. And for men, low DHEA can lead to low testosterone. So you've heard me say, look, here's my biases. Number one, I love DHEA. It's benefited my life tremendously. I take 30 milligrams pretty much every single day. Once I get closer to 40, I might take 40 milligrams per day. And for women, you want to cut things down to about a third of what men take. So in this study, these men, they were over the age of 55, I believe. The scientists had them take 50 milligrams a day. Now, for women, I would start out at like 5 milligrams or 10 milligrams. For men, you can start out a little bit higher. But as you can see here, statistically significant increases in testosterone and a lot of favorable parameters when it comes to thyroid hormone health. So there's a lot of things you can do with your diet. Obviously, low carb, you can carb cycle, you can compress your feeding window. But as you get older, sometimes we just need better life through chemistry. And this is where things like vitamin D come in, vitamin K, periodic probiotics, based upon your exposure levels and things like that. And I'm a huge fan of DHEA. So we do offer some of these different natural products on our website over at myoscience.com, so you can check that out. But I'm just going to leave this up here because this to me was very fascinating. So that's it for the structure of today's show. Now, what I would like to do is get to some of your questions here and just honor some of the people that are here. Karen says, I ordered my DHA from Myoscience last week. Thank you, Karen, for that. We have a lot of different SKUs of DHA, a micronized version, non-micronized versions. We have a spray. This is a huge aspect of whole body health. So important stuff. Donatello says, I take 100 milligrams every morning. So, wow, Donatello, that's a lot of DHEA, but if it's working for you, hats off. Pickled Ham Productions is now playing outside is dangerous and dirty. Isn't it funny how, we read on a hike yesterday for Easter, and hopefully you all had a great Easter with your family, maybe had a good meal, things like that. And we went on a hike at a place we like to go to called Bastyr University. It has a great, the St. Edward's Park is right pitched on, Lake Washington. And I saw this father who seemed a little bit overbearing with his two kids and his wife. And he was really, as soon as they left the car, he grabbed his backpack, and I saw he parked next to us. They sprayed hand sanitizer all over the hands, which I was like, okay, so you're going to go for a hike. Why are you putting hand sanitizer on your kids? And then he made his little kids mask up, which again, thought was weird. You're going outdoor hiking, so you're sanitizing your hands and you're masking up. Okay, whatever. So we went different directions on this hike, but we ended up meeting down at the water. Not that we met, but there's a kind of an open area at St. Edward's Park right on Lake Washington. So we're down there, and I happen to see, they went down a different trail. We went down another trail, and I happen to see the same family of 4. And the kids are like, Dad, I'm hungry. Dad, I'm hungry. I could hear. And so the dad goes, okay, before you touch your mask, here's some hand sanitizer. He grabbed his backpack, sprayed hand sanitizer everywhere. And then I was very curious to see what he was going to feed his kids, because he's caring about the health of his kids, ostensibly. And he said, okay, so we have some leftover pizza, or you have an energy bar. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's really sad, that a father thinks he's doing the best thing for his family by spraying sanitizer everywhere and making the family socially distance and wear their facial coverings on a hiking trail. But then he's feeding his kids processed carbohydrates, which was really a sad sort of thing. Okay, so Pickled Ham Production says, never use hand sanitizer, it kills bacteria. Yeah, well, what's interesting is I don't have the study right in front of me, and I will actually just kind of throw on some of the images here so that you all watching live can actually engage with some of this content. But there was a study by scientists in Canada that actually tracked families and their homes, and actually found that homes that use a lot of hand sanitizer, and they looked at grocery store receipts and interviewed people and things like that. And what they found is that the homes that use the highest levels of sanitizer had the highest prevalence of kids with obesity, which I thought was quite interesting. So you have, again, you have these parents that are trying to do what's best for their families, and they're trying to excessively clean the house. But what they're doing is they're actually killing off healthful bacteria. And pathologic changes in that bacterial composition is linked with obesity in those kids. And that was really unfortunate to me. Maybe we can do a full video on that. It was actually quite sad, but something that we should be talking about. So yeah, hand sanitizer is not, not something that we all, should be doing. Okay. Let's keep on going. I remember when the CDC was compromising, giving us wrong info due to non-experts, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So there has been a lot of mixed messaging. That is for sure. Hey friends, I do want to ask you, if you're here right now and you're enjoying this content, please hit that like button. Also, if you've tried DHEA, you tried vitamin D, please check out our sister company, myoscience.com. We have a lot of amazing formulations and great pricing too, fast shipping. You can use the coupon code podcast at checkout. And that actually helps support the production of content and videos like this. Okay, Lily says, what supplements do you recommend for anxiety? Now, for anxiety, the number one thing that I recommend is breathing. So I have a great podcast coming out with Patrick McEwen all about that. We've all experienced, periods of anxiety and depression before, but one of the things that a lot of people that are anxious, they don't realize it, but they're not breathing properly. Scientific studies have actually validated this about, in panic and other related issues when it comes to anxiety, is people are not breathing properly. So I would encourage you to learn how to breathe. Check out the podcast we did with Josh Trent, where we teach you a hyperventilation box breathing technique. There's a lot of these. Definitely listen to the podcast we did with James Nestor. Learning how to breathe can be very effective. A lot of people that have anxiety, they're breathing too much and they're doing upper chest breathing and they're not activating their diaphragm and their parasympathetic nervous system. So that's important. But from a supplement standpoint, L-theanine is good to use. Getting off dairy. Some people that have anxiety have dairy and other food sensitivities. But if I could just throw a small plug in for one of the formulas that I put together called Myo Relax and Calm. That's great because it's an electrolyte. It features things like myo-inositol, which is a secondary signaling molecule for the brain and also for the periphery. It supports whole body health and healthy metabolism. And it has sun-theanine, which is a patented L-theanine that's not from China or India or have any yucky stuff in it. It's really clean. That's been shown to actually help calm the mind and improve your body's sort of this alpha wave signaling in the brain, which can be helpful. So Lily, start out with your breath, start out with exercise, start from there. Then if you want to throw in different supplements, you can try some of those different things. Okay, what else do we have here? Crispy says, roll in the dirt, rough and tumble play. Yeah, that is really, 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 really good. Okay. Okay, Kathy says, is A2 milk any better? Yeah, I think A2 milk is good. I think raw, unpasteurized milk is good. But friends, remember, if we want to just simplify nutrition and sort of think about nutrition from a teleologic or evolutionary perspective, what animals drink milk? It's really baby animals. So I think, if you're over the age of, say, 35 or 40 and you have a first-degree relative or a family member that has had cancer or diabetes or any sort of mTOR overexpression type condition, maybe dairy is more like a treat and it's not an everyday staple. But when you do dairy, you definitely don't want to do the homogenized, ultra pasteurized type of dairy. So raw cheeses, periodically goat dairy, unpasteurized A2 dairy, good, but should it be every single day? No. Or think about the conditions when you have dairy. Is it in the post-exercise window? Is it after you're breaking a fast, for example? Is it periodically, fermented dairy? Things like that. I think I don't think it's always bad for people, but I do think the ultra homogenized and ultra pasteurized dairy is probably not very healthy for people. Okay. What else do we have? Okay, no long-term safety studies on the vaccine. Okay, with regards to the vaccine, I have to be very careful about talking about this in any way, shape, or form, but I do want to ask you all, I've been doing a lot of research on this because for some people's profession, they have to get it. Like it's just one of those things. And I have ideas about if you have to get this particular shot, which ones I would recommend and why over others. Would you like more info on that? If you do, let me know. Like I said, I've been diving into this quite extensively. Okay, What else do we have, friends? Hello? All right. Well, I think that's it for today, friends. I'm very, very grateful that you were here live. If you're enjoying this content, please hit that like button. I will update the show notes that you have access to some of this. Joshua Webb, what's happening here? Thanks for being here. We have Brandon Jackson in the house. We have, some cool stuff. Okay, Rebecca says, can DHEA supplementation help with adrenal recovery from overtraining? Yes, Rebecca. So it can help. So circadian rhythm issues are certainly a factor with overtraining. So I would consider DHEA first thing in the morning. You want to mirror your body's natural circadian clock system. So first thing in the morning, it can be helpful. Absolutely. So remember, for women, start slow. So you can try our pure 5 milligram DHEA. Start slow and then slowly ramp up over time. There definitely is a qualitative difference. We get a pure USP Pharma grade DHEA. There's a lot of knockoff DHEA products out there. I've had several clients who've been taking DHEA, taking high dosages of it, and we test their levels, and their levels are not increased at all. So consider quality there as well. Okay, friends. Last question here. So question: do a video on chromium and vanadium and its effect on insulin. So what I would just say, honestly, I've sold chromium and vanadium since 2006 as a consultant to different doctors. It doesn't move the needle much when it comes to blood sugar regulation. So it's not really, I can't say that I could recommend it. If you want to affect those metabolic systems that you mentioned, try berberine hydrochloride. It's absolutely phenomenal. It works well. You can see the results right away. Chromium, vanadium, honestly, you're kind of wasting your time. Okay, friends, have an awesome rest of your day. Thanks for tuning in, and hopefully you found this helpful, and we'll catch you in a future video down the road. Bye now.